Hello guys, this is DragonComa coming today with a different video. If you weren't here when my channel was going through around December, I did videos on like look at this card, like different type of cards that you should try out, or just cards in the current metagame and analysis on why. But that series kind of died out because I got really lazy. I had schoolwork and stuff. But I want to do something different, and it's gonna be on different types of deck techs. And they're gonna be different. Not the standard deck techs like Neospatial Grand Mall, Kaiku. Those are like good deck techs, but these are more the obscure ones I found digging through my endless amounts of commons and rares and useless foils, in a sense. And I'll tell you this: if you have a pretty big collection of commons and rares and like so-called useless foils, just look in them. You'll find a lot of interesting cards in there that can actually do some things in today's current metagame. So I'm going to start off. There's a few cards in here, a lot of cards in here actually. Some of them are for certain decks, some of them are for universal decks. But I'm going to start off with monsters. This one is called Starship's Spy Plane. What it does is if your opponent controls an Xyz monster, you can special summon it from your hand. And if you special summon from your hand, so it does not have to be special summoned by this effect only, you can send one of your opponent's spells or traps back to their hand. Now, I know your opponent's not always going to have an Xyz monster on board, so that's kind of a problem for this card, so it's not that great. But the ability to send one of your opponent's spell traps back to their hand is absolutely amazing. Not to mention, it's a level 4, so it lets you go into rank 4 Xyz as well. So it's not that bad of a card. It's not the best card either, but I probably would not suggest you side this card. It's kind of goofy, but it's kind of like, it's okay. It doesn't have a lot of attack, defense, or anything, but it just lets you bring it out for free, so it's really, really interesting in that sense. Next we have Trap Eater. Now this card saw some play, I remember, but this card's actually not bad at all. I'm kind of surprised it kind of died down in popularity, and I think it does have a chance of coming back right now. So basically what it does is this card cannot be normal summoned or normal summoned or set, and it can only be special summoned by its effect, which is by sending one continuous trap card. Let me read it. I'm sorry. Your opponent controls to the graveyard. So you can only use it if your opponent has a face-up trap card, so it has to be a continuous one. And you have to send it to your graveyard to special summon it. It's actually not that bad. It gets rid of a lot of annoying spells or annoying traps, so it can get rid of. I'm not sure about Vanity's Emptiness, but that could be a possibility. Royal Decrees, Fiendish Chains. I can only think of those right now. Well, Call of the Haunted too, and your opponent really minuses it if you get rid of those kinds of traps. So Trap Eater is really good. Not to mention it's a 1900 body. So you can just leave it on the board if you're facing like a smaller monster deck. And it's also a tuner, so you can go into like synchro plays. And with right now with the most with everything being level 4 in the metagame, you can make some really good Xyz plays with this card. So it's not that bad. So those are the only monsters that I could find so far. So yep. Next is for spells. This one's called Court of Agony. Basically what it does is if your opponent special summons a monster from the deck, it cannot attack, its effects are negated. Sorry, I have to. Okay, it cannot activate the effect, its effects are negated, and it cannot attack. And those monsters on the field cannot attack, activate their effects, and their effects are negated as long as this card's on the field. So it's actually really, really good, especially against right now hats or any kind of artifact, trap, tricks variants, especially against hands, because hands are being thrown into everything. Basically, your opponent cannot attack with the hands. It also counters Artifact Sanctum perfectly, because your opponent can bring out the Moral Talk, but the Moral Talk cannot attack, cannot activate its effect, which is absolutely amazing. And hands cannot attack, and that's the main way they get over the back row, and their effects cannot be activated either. So Court of Agony is absolutely amazing in that sense. Next is Summoning Curse. Every single time a player, every single time a monster is special summoned, you have to banish one. The control of that special summon monster has to banish one card from their hand, and you have to pay 500 life points, or this card's destroyed during your turn. Uh, which actually works kind of well. It kind of can be bad for you because if you're playing a special summon heavy deck, this card will hurt you. But if your opponent's playing a special summon heavy deck, they're gonna have to banish one of their cards from their hand every single turn, which is so ridiculous. And it's only at the low cost of 500 life points. It's not like I don't know other trap cards that cost that many life points to keep on the board, but 500 is not that much to pay. It's 1/16th, which amounts to something after a while, but it's not bad. It really, and you can destroy it anytime you want, technically, if you don't pay the 500. So it can really, really stop your opponent if your opponent's playing something like, I said, hats, because every single time their hands are destroyed, they bring out another hand. Moral Talks, they try to Dianea. This thing just like makes them really suffer. Another tech choice I have is Painful Return. Basically, your opponent chooses one monster in your graveyard, and then at the end phase you add it back to your hand. Now, this is kind of bad because you have to wait till the end phase to get it back. But the ability to get one of your monsters back into your hand, let's just say the only monster in your graveyard is like a BLS, then your opponent's forced to bring a BLS back to your deck, back to your hand. So that's really, really, really nice. It can stop. It just lets you cycle monsters, and it's not the best card, as I said, because your opponent can choose anything. So if there's like a really junk card in a junk monster in your deck, I mean in your graveyard, excuse me. I just got off of work, so I'm kind of tired. So it's not that great, but still, as I said, the ability to get one of your monsters back to your hand is not bad, especially if it's only one monster. Next is No One of Crossout. This card's actually really, really good. Basically what it does is target one of your opponent's face down spells or traps and banish it, and if it's a trap, banish all copies from either player's deck. So if you hit something like an Artifact Sanctum, your opponent banishes all Artifact Sanctums from their deck. If it's something like a Wiretap, you banish all their Wiretaps from the deck. Of course, you're probably going to be Wiretaps too, so you're going to have to banish yours, but the ability just to get rid of your opponent's Wiretaps, like all of them, is absolutely amazing. Royal Decree, Phoenix Chains, anything, you know, it really helps. Final one, I talked about this card in one of my Look at My Card videos, and my sister's doing silly karate in the background, and Sargasso, basically what it does is every single time a player exit summon, they take 500 damage, and at the end phase, if they control Xyz monsters, they take 500 damage. So this is good against Xyz heavy decks. Right now, there really aren't any Xyz heavy decks out there. Mermail, Mythic Dragons-ish, dragons in general, and Hat too. It's not the greatest card, but it can disrupt your opponent's plays because, like, take 500 damage, because each turn they take a minimum of 1,000 damage if they do summon one Xyz monster, so that's actually not bad. That's it for the spells. For the traps, this one's called Grave Robber. I actually do have this one because my friend gave this one to me. Basically what Grave Robber does is you can take one of your opponent's spells and use it, and what it does, and if you do, you take 2,000 damage. So it's really, it has a heavy cost of 2,000 because normally you'll be using that for a Solemn Warning, and the problem is if you activate on your opponent's turn, you cannot activate that spell trap. But I guess it can be good because if your opponent relies on the spell, like especially if you're facing spellbooks and you just take it on your opponent's turn, they don't have the stuff to banish, and that can be a problem. So especially if they're trying to go for the if they're going for the Eternity Master play, Eternity bring back their Masters, then you just activate this and take their Eternity so they cannot copy anything, and Master's dead in their hand. And also you can copy like on your turn you can copy stuff like Dark Hole, or if you're playing a Hat Mirror match, you can take their Artifact Ignition. Uh, you can I don't know, just it allows for a lot of things. You can take their soul charge, although you're going to be paying for a lot of life points there. Sometimes it's just good to get access to your opponent's spells if they have a good spells in their hand. Not the best card. Definitely would not suggest running it that much, but it's still pretty fun to run. I've tried it before. Sealing Ceremonial Suiton. This is only for water-based decks, which is like Mermail, Merlantian, Atlantean. Yeah, that's about it. That are actually kind of relevant. Sharks, maybe. Basically, what it does is once per turn, you can discard one water monster and banish one of your opponent's cards in their graveyard. And right now, banishing cards in the graveyard is absolutely crucial in the game to stop your opponents from going into place, because everything is graveyard oriented right now. So the only problem is that you cannot activate during either player's turn, so that's the downside of this card. But still, like, if you the thing about this, that's why Gund was so broken and it was finally put to one. You can technically discard Gund, banish one of their cards in the graveyard, and then special summon a monster from the graveyard with Gund. So that's absolutely amazing. It's not the best card, as I said. I would not suggest you running it, but it's just an interesting deck tech, kind of to surprise your opponent. Remote Revenge. Basically, if a card targets one of your monsters and destroys it, you can choose one there. You can switch the appropriate target to your opponent's card. And right now, everything is about single destruction, not necessarily huge destruction. So if you're playing like Priestess, if you see a Priestess, Bear, Fire Hand, just really annoying cards on board, you can just Remote Revenge, destroy theirs instead, which is very, very funny. As I said, it's not really that great of a card, but it can disrupt your opponent's plays, which is really, really nice. Next is Major Riot. It's very conditional, and it only works in one or two decks, which are Spirits and Ghostricks. And basically, what it does is if one of your monsters is sent back to your hand, send all monsters back to the hand, then special summon all of them back onto the field and face on defense position, which works very well for Ghostricks. But as I said, it's very conditional. The only cards that I can think of that actually send back to the hand that are relevant and right now are Phoenix Wind Blast, Compulsory, and Tiara Misu. So, and it only works really well in Ghostricks and Spirits, and those aren't really relevant decks. So, well, Ghostrick kind of is, but it's kind of died down. But it can disrupt your opponent's plays. It's actually pretty funny if you activate it, especially if you're playing against Madolches, because all their monsters are face down now, and you can just proceed to do junk to them. Then the final one is Astral Barrier. I couldn't find my English one. This is the Spanish one, and I'm just going to tell you the effect. Every single time your opponent attacks, you can decide whether it's a direct attack, and this works very well against hands because hands only activate if they get destroyed. So if they're trying to crash into something, you can just make it a direct attack, and therefore they kind of don't get their effect off. So it's kind of useful in that way, and sometimes you just don't want your monster to be destroyed to keep board presence. So Astral Barrier, not a great card, especially if you're like mid-game and you're losing, but it does help because right now a lot of the cards effect activates when they attack, like Fire Hand, or when they're destroyed. And Fire Hand, Ice Hand usually only really crash into your monsters to get rid of the cards. Catastor is a problem. Armatus, well, technically you want to activate this as soon as Armatus hits board. So it's pretty good of a card in that aspect, but as I said, it's very, very conditional. So there are some problems with this card, but at the same time, it's not bad. So yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of interesting deck techs. Maybe you would try some of these guys out because they're actually not that bad cards. They're definitely not the greatest deck techs, and there's definitely better deck techs. But some of these cards can actually. The thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! That you absolutely have to remember is the element of surprise. Because when opponents side against a certain deck, they expect a certain deck to do something. And if you decide something really goofy, like Trap Eater, then your opponent is like, what do I do? I just lost my Phoenix Chain. So it's kind of problematic. And they can't really, some of these cards are very hard to counter. And I think they're not bad. And So I hope you guys try it out. This is DragonComa signing out for now. See ya.